how do I get a film distributor? But more importantly, how do I avoid the bad ones? Those are questions I'm going to be answering here today on the final part of my video, my independent film video series here that I put out over the last couple of weeks. If this is your first time joining, this is an abridged version of a longer video that I put out a few weeks ago where I break down all the basics as far as independent film distribution. So if you've already watched that 2-hour video, this is just a section from that video. So you don't have to repeat watch it unless you are looking to get some information, some repeat information that you may have forgotten or just need to refer back to later. So in this video, like I said, we're going to talk about how to get a distributor. We're going to be talking about some helpful tips overall as far as distribution goes, how to avoid predatory distributors, and then my final thoughts as far as film distribution as a whole. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the obvious way, at least the old school way of doing this, I don't know how much it works anymore, but film festivals, you submit to a film festival, and I wrote down all the big ones here because that's pretty much the only way to get distribution is through something like a Sundance or a South by Southwest, Tribeca, TIFF, etc. Good luck getting into those unless you're a major filmmaker, but never say never. I guess somebody at our budget level is probably not going to get into Sundance. Screening, if accepted, your film is showcased to a curated audience, including distributors, critics, and industry professionals. Distribution opportunities, distributors attending the festivals might approach you with offers. You can pitch directly to distributors or sales agents during the event. So that would be a reason to go to these festivals. You can, if you know a specific distributor or sales agents going to be there, you can pitch directly to them. And then obviously winning awards or generating buzz can attract a lot of attention. The key benefits, obviously credibility and recognition. You have a lot of networking opportunities like I meant, and then potential for deals for these different distribution methods. The biggest tip for success as I have here is you need to target the right festivals, obviously. Again, if you're making something at my budget level, you're probably not getting into any of these festivals. So you're going to have to target much smaller festivals. And a lot of time distributors are not going to these festivals, but you never know. Have your press materials ready, create a press kit, have trailers, posters, and all that ready to go, and then engage with attendees. Talk to industry professionals, attend networking events, and build connections. Now, another common method, and I don't know how, a lot of distributors go to these methods, but we have the film markets, which is where a lot of these distribution deals are made. So film markets are industry-only events where filmmakers, distributors, sales agents, and buyers negotiate deals. Unlike film festivals, film markets are strictly business focused. There are no public screenings, only private screenings and business meetings. So you have the big ones like AFM, American Film Market. You have the European Film Market, Berlin, Germany. You have Cannes, and then you have something like Toronto or TIFF in Canada. How it works, they have sales booths or pitches. Filmmakers or the representatives showcase their films through booths or private screenings. And actually, this is something Indie Rights does, and a lot of other distributors do too. But Indie Rights will go to these film markets and pitch your film to these different distributors or whatever platforms. They'll meet with buyers. You can pitch your film to distributors, buyers, and sales agents in one-on-one meetings. Distribution deals. If distributors see potentials, they may offer licensing or distribution agreements. Deals can include domestic or international rights, like we've talked about before. And then pre-sales, which I don't know how relevant pre-sales are now these days, but it was at some point. Pre-sales, at some market, you can negotiate pre-sale deals, selling distribution rights before the film is finished to fund the remainder of production or cover distribution costs. This was very big with independent films 10 or so years ago. I don't know how much this is being done now. I don't see it talked about a lot as far as at our level, but I know it is something that happens. The key benefits here, obviously, are direct access to buyers. It allows you to, connect directly with sales agents, distributors, and streamers. Potential for international deals, so you have a lot better chance of landing international deals through a film market. And then sales agent representation. Even if you attend the market yourself, many filmmakers will hire a sales agent to represent them. So you don't always have to do this yourself. You could hire a sales agent and have them do all the work for you. Tips for success, obviously getting a sales agent is obviously a great thing. Make sure it's the right sales agent, which we'll talk about here momentarily. Having the right marketing materials obviously helps, and trying to book meetings in advance if possible. This will be harder to do if you don't have social proof. Like if you're a first-time filmmaker, this is going to be very difficult. But if you have a bunch of films in your docket already, this is obviously going to be a lot easier for you to do because you have that social proof. And then obviously sales agents, your distribution representative. A sales agent acts as the middleman between you and potential distributors. They specialize in selling the rights to your films to platform streamers or international buyers, handling the negotiation process on your behalf. How it works: you hire a sales agent. You can find a sales agent at film festivals, film markets, or through referrals. Representation: sales agents pitch your films to distributors, negotiate deals, and help you secure distribution rights. Revenue split: they'll typically take a 10 to 25% commission on deals they negotiate. You'll still need to pay the platforms or distributors cut on top of that. So, if your cut of something is like $100,000, just for easy numbers, and their commission is 10%, then they're going to take 10% of that $100,000 or $10,000, right? Territory sales. Sales agents often sell the rights on a territory by territory basis, which is nice, helping you maximize your distribution revenue. Obviously, the key benefits of using a sales agent is their connections, their negotiation expertise, and it's just time saving for you because you don't have to figure out all this stuff yourself, which is nice. As far as tips for success when choosing a sales agent, choose a sales agent with a proven track record. And actually, I have an interview coming up here. Actually, the interview will be out already when this video comes out, but look at it's like a 3-hour interview with these filmmakers, Brady Nelson and Neil Fortre. They hired a sales agent, and that worked out pretty well for them. So they do have experience with that. So I have talked to somebody who's done that. Clear contracts: make sure the contract for them, as far as their commission rates, is very clear, and it outlines their responsibilities. And make sure if festival representation, and they're going to film festivals and representing you in all these markets to help increase your film's visibility. And then, of course, you can just cold call distributors, right? You can just skip all this other stuff and just contact the distributors directly, which isn't completely uncommon, right? You can email them. Like, for example, Indie Rights, you can just contact them directly. They have a Google form that you fill out, and then if they're interested, they'll contact you. With other distributors, they probably have a similar process, or you can email them. But, this is great for niche and genre films, especially if it fits their catalog. So here's some brief steps on what you can do to kind of cold call them, research and target the right distributors. So, if you're making a horror film, you probably shouldn't be contacting faith-based distributors. You know what I mean? So make sure you're targeting the right distributors. You can use services like IMDb Pro, Film Freeway, or LinkedIn to find contact information. You can look for indie-friendly distributors like Gravitas Ventures, or I'm sorry, I actually don't know how to pronounce that, but I've heard kind of mixed things about Gravitas, so just keep that in mind. Indie Rights is obviously very friendly, or Shout Studios. I don't know enough about them, but they're there. Prepare a professional pitch. Write a concise and compelling email that includes a brief synopsis of your film, if it won any awards, a link to your trailer and screener, and mention the film's target audience and marketing potential. One thing I've noticed as far as like working in content, so not necessarily with films, but like I'm a full-time YouTuber as well, not with this channel, but I work for another channel, and I have all the emails. One common thing that I have found, and why I understand why a lot of emails people send out probably don't get responded to, is that they're usually a mess. So make sure you keep it very lean, very concise, very easy to read. If you're just sending like a brick of text, kind of like what I got here, that's going to turn people off from reading it. If I see a brick of text, if somebody emails our company a brick of text, I'm probably not reading it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I keep my emails very short when I'm talking with people. I get straight to the point. I'm not fluffing it up because people don't have time. If you're reading 100 emails a day, you don't have time to read bricks and bricks of text. You have time to read a few sentences. So make sure you're keeping it Very, very brief. And then if they don't, if they don't reach back out to you, you can follow up respectfully. If you don't get a response, you can send up a follow-up email every 1 to 2 weeks. Just don't be spammy or pushy. If they're interested, they'll get back to you. Just got to be a little patient. I'm forgetting the word that I'm thinking of. But be proactive, but don't be annoying. The pros of this: direct contact. You obviously bypass gatekeepers and pitch directly to decision makers. You don't need festivals. You have a lot more potential for smaller deals. The cons are it's a very low response rate. You don't have a lot of leverage. And then there's a lot more potential for predatory offers. So just make sure you keep that in mind. So definitely do your homework. Persistence. That's the word I was looking for. Be persistent, but polite, so you don't come off as spammy if you're reaching out to a lot of different people. Make sure you curate your emails to the different distributors too. Don't just copy and paste something you wrote on ChatGPT to a bunch of distributors. One thing, like when I'm looking for people to work for us, I notice a lot of people who just ChatGPT a bunch of nonsense. And sometimes they don't even change what ChatGPT wrote. They'll just copy and paste exactly what ChatGPT wrote. And ChatGPT will be like, insert project type. And then they'll put that in the freaking email. Be diligent. Don't be stupid. Now, packaging your film for distribution is obviously very important, regardless if you're pitching to a distributor, attending a market, or working with a sales agent. Doing this properly is obviously very important. So essential materials you need: a screener, a high quality screener of your film, ideally a DCP or high-res digital format. Usually a YouTube link will be fine. You can do Vimeo, do something password protective if you want to. A trailer, obviously you want to make a really, really great trailer. A press kit and a marketing plan definitely don't hurt either. And here's a couple of tips for maximizing your distribution opportunities. So start with festivals. Use festivals to generate buzz and credibility, even if you're just doing this yourself. Leverage market attendance. If you decide to attend one of these film markets, have your film properly packaged and book meetings in advance if possible. Work with a sales agent, especially if you're a first-time filmmaker. Hiring a reputable sales agent increases your chances of securing good distribution deals. And be persistent and patient. Distribution deals often take time and multiple attempts. Don't rush into unfavorable agreements. Don't, you're dating, essentially. Don't marry the first person you go on a date with unless they're really good. So to give you a quick summary, here are the best paths for indie distribution. Film festivals, great for generating buzz and attracting distributors, best for filmmakers looking to build credibility and industry exposure. Film markets, direct access to distributors and buyers, best for filmmakers ready to negotiate sales and licensing deals. Hiring a sales agent to handle distribution negotiations and have industry connections is great. Best for filmmakers who want expert representation and broader reach. And of course, packaging is key. Always have a trailer, screener, and press kit ready to go. A strong marketing package makes your film more attractive to buyers. So by strategically combining film festivals, film markets, sales agent, representation, indie filmmakers can maximize their chances of securing distribution deals and reaching a global audience. Let's get into some brief but important tips. We're almost here to the end. So film marketing and promotion are obviously important. Even with distribution, you will still need to promote your film, even if they're offering marketing services. So whether that's through social media, press releases, or audience building, you're probably always going to want to do some sort of promotion yourself. The distributor's role: some distributors handle the marketing, others may leave you with it. Make sure you clarify the level of marketing support that they'll provide. Building your audience, building a fan base on platforms like Patreon or Instagram can help attract distributors and generate self-distribution revenue. So marketing is the number one most important thing you can do just with the film in general after or when you start distributing. So ways you can build an audience before the release: you can do social media, behind the scenes content, trailers, cast Q&As, etc. You can build email lists, which is actually something I'm experimenting with right now. So you can have direct access to your fans. Crowdfunding helps fund the film and build hype. So I want to make more videos about crowdfunding in the future. I think this is easier to do after you have a couple of films or social proof, in your belt. It's very hard to do on your first film, but some filmmakers do have luck with it. Like you have exceptions like the YouTuber Chris Stuckman, who funded his entire film through crowdfunding, but he did have social proof with his YouTube channel, right? So crowdfunding is a lot easier when you have a built-in audience already. Niche audiences matter. Horror films, obviously, target horror fans. Make sure you're getting on all the important platforms like Tubi. Make sure you're doing Blu-ray releases, theatrical releases, having the right kind of merch. Obviously, all those things help. With faith-based films, marketing to church groups seems to work pretty well with that. Social justice documentaries you can promote through activist communities. So those are just 3, but if you have a genre outside of that, like an action film or something like that, just do your research, pretty much. Your film release strategy obviously matters. Theatrical versus digital. Some filmmakers opt for a theatrical release before going digital, while others prefer to skip theaters in favor of streaming or video on demand. Windowing your strategy, discussing how the film might have different release windows. Example, first in theaters, then video on demand, which you can even break down the video on demand into, we're going to start with transactional video on demand so people can buy and rent it first, and then we'll do some streaming, and then after that we'll do some AVOD, and then you could do broadcast as well, and how windowing can affect both revenue and audience access. I would like to do a further video on this, so I think what I'll have to do is break down my strategy for cashing out and kind of how each window worked for me long term. So I think that's something I'll definitely do, or just talk to filmmakers about in general. Contract negotiation basics. What to watch for in a contract. Rights granted, territories, platforms, and formats, obviously. Revenue splits, including advances or minimum guarantees. Exclusivity clauses. Is it going to be exclusive rights or non-exclusive? And a payment schedule. When are we getting paid? Are we getting paid monthly, quarterly, biannually? Make sure that's in your contract. Legal assistance. You may want a lawyer for contract review, especially if you're dealing with complex rights or long-term deals. And actually did an interview with my lawyer for cashing out, and she mentioned a lot of free resources as well. So those are available if you can't pay a lawyer outright. Post-distribution, royalties and accounting. How do you ensure you're getting your fair share? Look at the royalty reports and payment schedules. So make sure your distributor is giving these to you. Distribution recoupment. Clarify how distributors recoup their marketing and distribution costs before paying out your share. And then tracking success. Consider platforms or services to help track your film's performances across different platforms, views, sales, etc. And then crowdfunding for distribution. You may need to do some crowdfunding on Kickstarter or Indiegogo to help fund a self-distribution campaign or help generate initial interest in a film before distribution. Again, I think this is easier to do after you have a couple films in your belt, but it's definitely an option. So that wraps up section 8. Now let's get into section 9. How do we avoid predatory distributors? So now we're going to talk about some things that predatory distributors will do, what you should do to avoid them, and just all that funness. So 1, red flags of predatory distributors: excessive or undefined recoupable expenses. So something that I've talked about quite a bit. What that means: in most distribution deals, the distributor deducts their expenses, such as marketing and delivery, before sharing profits with you. Predatory distributors often include vague, undefined, or inflated expenses to ensure they never have to pay you or back-end royalties. So I use the example of the steak dinner. They're charging outrageous expenses. There could just be no limit. So you want to make sure you're keeping an eye out for that. So red flags would be no expense cap. The contract doesn't limit on how much the distributor can deduct. I feel like it's more common that there is a cap, but just make sure that there's no indefinite cap on what expenses that they can charge you. And they're not charging you up front, but you just may never see your revenue, right? Broad language, like phrases like all marketing and administrative costs without specifics, allow for unlimited deductions. Ongoing expenses. Some distributors add perpetual fees, consistently reducing your profits. All things to keep in mind. What to do: demand itemized expense breakdowns in the contract. Add a cap on recoupable expenses, i.e., no more than 20 to 30% of your gross revenue. Ensure you have the right to audit their expenses. That's the big one. So if they're charging you a bunch of stuff, they need to show what they're charging you for. You need to be able to ask for a breakdown. It's kind of insane. Like if my boss asks me, what does this video cost? How much have we spent? And I just say, I don't know. It just costs what it costs. Like we charge this and that, it's like, don't worry about it. No, like it shouldn't, my boss wouldn't have find that acceptable for me. You shouldn't find it acceptable for a partner that you're working with. Next, long-term one-sided contracts. What this means, some predatory distributors lock you into lengthy contracts, such as 10 to 25 years, or even in perpetuity, preventing you from seeking better deals later. You lose control of your film for years, even if the distributor is doing little to promote it. So, they may do a lot in like the first couple months, but they may not just, market your film at year 10. Are they marketing your film at year 10? Probably not. They're probably doing the least minimal effort. They may go to like AFM, charge you that steak dinner, and then charge you later, right? But they're not doing any real sort of marketing beyond, what they in the first initial couple months or years. Red flags to look out for: contracts lasting more than 5 years, automatic renewal clauses without your approval, no reversion clause, meaning you can't get your rights back if the distributor fails to meet expectations. What you can do, you can negotiate for a shorter term contract. You can include a reversion clause, meaning if the distributor doesn't meet performance benchmarks, such as revenue targets or sales volume, the rights revert back to you. And then avoid contracts with automatic renewals unless parties both explicitly agree. So actually, indie rights mentioned that they do have automatic renewals, so you'll kind of have to pay attention to that. But they're at least upfront about that. But you do have the ability to stop your contract if you want. Film Hub is also in perpetuity as far as their rights, but you're supposedly able, and this is according to the CEO, that you're able to take down your film whenever you want. So they have your film in perpetuity as long as you're on the platform, right? But this is more for other distributors, more so than those two specifically, because they're at least transparent about that. Just make sure you're watching out for that with traditional distributors. Lack of transparency or vague reporting. What that means, predatory distributors often provide minimal or unclear reporting, making it difficult to track your film's earnings. This allows them to underreport profits or hide expenses, keeping more money for themselves. Some red flags here would be infrequent or irregular financial reports, no clear timeline for royalty payments, lack of audit rights, preventing you from verifying the distributor's accounting. What you can do about this: demand detailed regular reports, such as quarterly, that specify gross revenue, expenses they charge, the net profits, and then your share of the net profits. So gross would be before expenses, net would be after expenses. Insist on audit rights in the contract to verify their accounting, and if they refuse audit clauses, run. Next, high or hidden distribution fees. What this means, many predatory distributors exchange or charge exorbitant upfront fees for services like marketing, delivery, but often do very little to promote the film. In some cases, they take large upfront payments and then disappear. Red flags: upfront fees over $5,000 to $10,000 without clear justification. Hidden marketing fees that are deducted from revenue without your consent. Vague service fees with no explanation of what they cover. What you can do about this is avoid large upfront fees. Legitimate distributors make money by taking a cut of the film's profits, not by charging huge upfront fees. If the distributor insists on upfront costs, ask for specific details on how money can be spent. Include a clause preventing hidden fees overall. Next, lack of marketing or promotional effort. What this means, some distributors sign films but make no effort to market or promote them. They may warehouse your film, acquiring it but not objectively trying to sell it simply to expand their library. A lot of distributors will sell like a package of films altogether to a platform. They don't really care about your film too much, so they'll say, we're going to market your film, but they'll write one tweet about it or whatever, and then just group your film with a bunch of other films, or just lock it in a basement. So they just say, hey, we have all these films. Red flags: vague or missing marketing plan in the contract, no guarantee on a minimum marketing spend, lack of sales milestones or performance benchmarks, and what you can do. Include minimum marketing commitment clause. Example, the distributor must spend at least $5,000 to $10,000 on promotion. Add performance benchmarks. If the distributor doesn't achieve specific sales targets, the rights refer back to you, like we kind of talked about earlier. Make sure the contract specifies their marketing responsibilities. Next, overly favorable revenue splits. What this means, some predatory distributors promise large revenue shares, such as 80-20, 90-10 in your favor to lure you in. However, they inflate expenses or hidden fees to ensure you never see profits. So make sure you're really paying attention to contract details. Red flags, unrealistically high revenue shares, contracts that lack expense transparency, making it easy for them to offset profits with inflated costs. What you can do, don't be lured in by overly generous splits. They're often a scam tactic. Ensure the contract has expense transparency clauses and caps on expenses. And one other thing I want to mention too that is not often talked about a lot, but make sure that you do some research on the company too. Like if they have a high likelihood of bankruptcy for one reason or another, like they're just spending way too much money, they're living lavishly. I don't know how you do this, but if you can figure out how to do some, research on the company's earnings or anything on what they're spending, their debt or whatever. If your film if they go bankrupt, you want to make sure there's a clause in your contract too, that if they go bankrupt, the rights are reverted back to you, because there's some companies like, I won't name names, but there's some distribution platforms that people have worked with and their films were locked up in these bankruptcy lawsuits. And then the films just can't get their rights back and they can't take it elsewhere. And a lot of these predatory distributors too, they'll start one company, purposely have the company go bankrupt, and then they'll have another company that they own buy the rights to those films for pennies on the dollars and do whatever they want with them afterwards. And then you just never see your film again. So make sure you're paying. I don't know how you pay attention to that, but maybe through referrals and Facebook groups and seeing what people have to say about them. But just know that's a real possibility as well. So how do we protect ourselves? One, you can get legal review. Always have an entertainment attorney review your distribution contract. They can catch predatory clauses and ensure you get a fair deal. You can do some research on the distributor, such as Googling the company name with terms like scam or lawsuit to see if they have a bad reputation. Use resources like IMDb Pro, Film Freeway, and other industry forums to research distributor reviews. Reach out to other filmmakers who have worked with the distributor and ask about their experience. That's probably the most simple thing you can do. Retain rights whenever possible. Keep as many rights as possible, especially international territories and ancillary platforms such as, physical and theatrical, like I talked about earlier. If you're giving up distribution rights, limit the contract term to ensure you have reversion clauses. Negotiate fair terms. Include audit rights to ensure the transparent accounting, set caps on recoupable expenses, and avoid long-term all rights deals, especially with small or unknown distributors. So key takeaways here: excessive expenses, hidden fees, and long-term contracts are common predatory tactics. Always include expense caps, audit rights, and performance benchmarks in your contract. Research potential in distributors thoroughly and get legal counsel before signing any deal. Don't be swayed by unrealistic revenue splits or large MGs promises without clear terms, and protect yourself by retaining as many rights as possible and setting clear reversion clauses. We're here at the end, so I wanted to leave you all with some final thoughts. This is a lot of information. So some really key takeaways: know your goals. If you want full creative and financial control, self-distribution or working with aggregators might be the best fit. If you're aiming for wider exposure, partnering with a distributor or using a hybrid model could offer more reach. And I just want to say too, I've used a lot of scary terms and I almost make it seem like distribution just sucks in general and you just shouldn't do it. That's not necessarily the case, but there's so many bad apples out there and so much misinformation that it's just best to know what you're getting into and having an idea of what to look out for before you start getting out there. I talked to a lot of filmmakers who don't even know the difference between TVOD, AVOD, and SVOD, right? And they're wanting to go out into distribution, not knowing just the absolute basics of basics, right? So that's really important to know, and honestly why I made this video in general. Protect your rights. Always read the fine print on contracts and be cautious of predatory distributors. Negotiate caps on expenses and ensure you have clear terms for revenue splits. Leverage your network. Festivals, film markets, and direct outreach to distributors or sales agents can open doors. Don't be afraid to cold pitch your film. Just make sure you're prepared with a professional press kit and screener whenever possible, and stay flexible. The indie film market is constantly evolving. Be open to exploring new platforms, marketing strategies, revenue models as they emerge. And of course, my final tip here, distribution is a long, long game. Even if you don't land a big deal right away, focus on building your audience, marketing your film, and nurturing relationships in the industry. With the right strategy, patience, and persistence, you can get your film in front of the right audience and maximize its success. All right, that does it for this video series. If you made it here to the end, I appreciate you so much for watching. I really hope that you got something out of this. Like I mentioned in the initial video, way back, it's a lot of information. I know there's a lot to consume here. So if you have questions, feel free to leave them in my comments or shoot me an email, which is in the description. Otherwise, I appreciate you all watching. It would mean the world to me if you would subscribe to my channel or like this video if you found it helpful, so that way we can get it out to a lot more people. And of course, if you want to help me out directly, my feature film Cashing Out will be linked in the description if you would like to check it out. And of course, a full playlist of all the individual videos that I made for this series will be linked down here, as far as the full 2-hour cut that I originally put out a few weeks or months ago whenever this video comes out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.